We call it a force plate because it's measuring what are called the ground reaction forces. So when you push into the ground, what does the ground do? It pushes back. This is why a pitcher loves like a mound. When they come down the mound, when they hit the ground hits back, a force comes up into their leg, hits their hip, and helps them create rotation. Now there are a bunch of ground forces that happen. There's 4 that really matter in the golf swing. There's a ground reaction force to make you shift weight horizontally or lateral, weight shift. We're going to look at how hard you push right and left in your golf swing. There's a vertical component. If you see some of the biggest hitters in the world, they're actually jumping when they hit. When you push down, it helps accelerate the club, so vertical force is really important. There's also torques. Torques is like twisting. I can see if you're using the ground this way. I call this rock and roll. It's called frontal plane torque. There's this type of torque. This is twisting. That's called horizontal plane torque. If I show you the average of the best players in the world, here's what the best players in the world do. The majority of them go to the top of their backswing. The first thing you're going to see them do is they're going to shift lateral. You're going to see a force go right to left. As they shift right to left, they start to do this torque here. They start to do what I call rock and roll. After they rock and roll, they start to twist, and then the last thing you see is they jump. So the best players in the world, they use all 4 of those, right? But the normal, what we call kinetic sequence, is they go right to left, rock and roll, twist, jump. They go right to left, rock and roll, twist, jump. This top graph is lateral, right to left. This next graph is rock and roll, this way. This next graph is twisting, and this is jumping. So the normal sequence goes lateral, rock and roll, twist, jump. And we're going to look to see what your sequence is. Now what I've done is I put a peak, a dot, a yellow dot, at when you peak each of these forces. First thing that peaks is right there, is lateral. Good, that's what the best players in the world, they go lateral first. So you're pushing right to left first.
I'm one of the best players in the world.
You're one of the best players in the world. You're there, you're there. The next thing you do is you twist. Okay? Yep. Then the next thing you do is you rock and roll, and then you jump. So here's what you just did. You went like this. You went lateral, you started to twist, then you rocked and rolled, and then you jumped. Most players go this way, they rock and roll, then they twist and they jump. That's what gets you steep. That gets you, you start. First thing I look at is between rock and roll and twisting. What are you? Are you more of a twister or a rock and roller? You can see right here for your rock and roll, you use about 20% of your body weight. For your twisting, you're about 11. So you're almost double the rock and roller than you are the twister.
Okay.
Now I would tell you, in my experience, that's one of the quickest ways to kill power, is to take away your horizontal, your twisting power. So if you keep twisting, you know you're going to be bad. So you go, stop that, you start to rock and roll, and you create more rock and roll, and that's kind of how you save your swing. But okay. You kill your twisting because you're not in a great position to twist anymore. So what's really key is if you have somebody sliding, you don't want them to hang back, right? We want a weight shift. We want to do it right so that you can use the ground reaction force. Now, how do you do it right? So first of all, the best players in the world, what they do, in the backswing, they rotate. Now, if you notice, the center of my pelvis moves away from the left leg as I'm rotating. I'm not swaying, right? And now from here, I'm going to shift my entire pelvis. My entire center of mass is going to get over my left leg. If I get my entire center mass over my left leg, now I can use that ground reaction force to help get that rotational speed. I think what a lot of players do is they don't get their center mass over here. They just kind of spin, then the knee goes forward, and it's almost like the knee slides, the hip hangs back, and all that energy is wasted. That's such a huge problem for getting more power. So getting your center mass over your left leg so that you can create that rotational velocity. Now, what could be a problem? Why could this be difficult? I think the most obvious would be hip range of motion. Right? It's really important that if I'm going to sit in
So I feel like my belt buckle at the top of my backswing is moving at a 45-degree angle towards my trail heel. So you can see here as I get to the top of the backswing, when I do this, it shallows the club and it brings my elbow down in front of my hip. If my hip turns or twists too early, then it moves my right elbow out into a steepening position. So what the best players in the world do is as the club is reaching the top of their backswing, they turn into their trail side. And before they've even reached the top, they've moved, they usually move their lead leg back in position. And what it does is as they move back, there's about an inch movement, about this much, it's not a lot, of the pelvis. It stays closed as I shift into that lead leg. So I get to here, I shift. I get to here, I shift. I get to here, I shift. Once that happens, the club's shallowed. Now I can start pushing with the ground to steepen it. I think a lot of times people feel like they've got to push too much into their lead foot. They don't have to do that. All I'm trying to do is recenter, remove my mass into a position that now allows me to push. It's not this huge downward movement. If I get this huge downward movement, a lot of times it's very difficult now. I've steepened the club too much.
Golfers that hit it short typically are very static, very still. Their center of pressure doesn't move, and they begin the backswing with their hands in the club. This nets a slower golf club, but this is power, and this is how we want to generate some force in the golf swing. And the way we do that is what I see the best players who come into my studio do. They start with some movement, and they're using this position to get a little pressure shift from side to side. And this is an important characteristic to generate force and power. When you set your feet, just get used to bouncing a little bit from side to side. We're settling into the shot, but we're not getting completely still. So as I settle and move a little pressure from foot to foot, I'm going to start pushing from my lead foot to the trail foot. And that gets the club going back a little faster. Making the club go back a little faster helps the mass of the club get further back, which gives it more time to accelerate to the ball. It also starts a great sequence. When my pressure leads the backswing, it's going to lead the downswing. And this little jogging motion is something that's so simple that you can apply to your golf swing, and it's going to give you more power and a lot better sequence in the golf swing.